Hi everyone, it's Talia from Zart Art, and today we're going to be making polymer clay jewellery pieces inspired by Australian culture. So here I've got a few examples of what we will be making today. So we're actually going to make one of these little platypus pieces and we're going to turn it into a brooch. So I've got a few different polymer clay jewellery pieces. So we've got some earrings, we've got a little lorikeet on a parrot hook, which you could use for a keychain, and we've got a iced vovo on a jump ring, which you could use for either a keychain or a necklace. We've got our lovely bin chicken brooch here, and we've got these cute little wattle earrings too. But what we're going to do today is make a little platypus brooch. So this one is an earring, so it's a little bit smaller than what we'll be making today. We're going to make it about the size of this bin chicken with the brooch back. So to begin, you're going to need polymer clay. So polymer clay will feel almost like plasticine when you're first touching it, but you can oven bake it and it turns into a hard plastic-like consistency, which is really great for jewellery pieces. Many artists use polymer clay for jewellery, and the work that we're basing this project on is Molly Coombs Marr, who is an Australian artist and who loves all things Australia and makes really quirky and cute jewellery pieces. So to begin, we've got our fresh packet of polymer clay, so let's figure out how to open this first. So we've got a few assorted colours, and what's great about polymer clay is that you can mix colours together to create different tones or different colours completely. And if you're using something like Sculpey, it's going to be nice and soft and easy to manoeuvre. So for our platypus, what we're going to need is a lighter brown, a dark brown, and we can use our silver packet. So I'm going to make a darker brown by mixing this gold colour with a little bit of red and maybe even a little bit of green, but we'll see what the tone comes out as. So when you are mixing colours, what you might want to do is mix a small amount together to see what the colour will be before mixing a whole bunch and realising that this isn't quite the right colour that you're looking for, especially if you're working in a class and you don't want to waste too much money on polymer clay. So I'm just going to see what this red and this gold colour will look like if I mix a little bit together. Okay, so I've mixed those two and it's probably a little bit more red than what I'd like it to be. So this purple will darken it a little bit while still adding some of those red tones. So I'll add a little bit of purple, mix my colours until I find the right tone that I'm looking for. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that colour. It's much darker than that gold. So what I'm going to do is mix a larger amount because we are making a brooch that's going to be quite a bit larger than our little earring here. I'm going to mix enough polymer clay for my base and those little features. If you're working with a class, your younger students might do something that's a bit larger because it's easier to mould larger shapes than it is to work in a very small format. Whereas if you're working with older kids, then you can go quite small and intricate. So now we've mixed our two main colors that we'll be using, and I've got some baking paper. Good rip. I've got some baking paper to work directly on. Because polymer clay is oven bake, you will need to put it in the oven, funnily enough, for it to set. And it's quite handy to work directly on the surface that you'll be putting in the oven, so you don't have to worry about picking it up, taking it off a sticky surface, because things can quite easily get different impressions of textures, or you might get your nail in there and accidentally make a mark that you don't want to make. So I would recommend to work on the surface that you will be putting in the oven so you don't alter the shape of the piece that you're working on. So, using my base color, and I'll need to reserve a little bit for his cute little tail. So this is basically modeling as you would with a natural clay or even modeling with plasticine. So what I will do is just mold the shape in my hand. So those basic shapes, we've got almost a little jelly bean shape for his body, and you can press the polymer clay quite thin. About 1/2 centimeter is pretty good for thickness, because if you are making something that is quite thick, then it's less likely to snap. So something that's small and thick like this won't snap very easily, whereas something like this is quite thin and it's quite long as well, so it could have the potential of snapping. But our little platypus is going to be a little bit chonky, so he doesn't snap, and he does need to be long enough to fit that brooch back on the back as well. So have a think about what kind of jewellery you're creating and how big that would be. Obviously we're making a brooch, which will be much larger than an earring would be. I've got a few little clay tools, polymer clay tools with me, so they can help you adjust some of the shapes. So if you've got polymer clay tools, use them to help adjust some of those shapes, as well as building texture, which we'll do more later on once we've got our basic form completed. But that helps with use of your fingers to get some of those little intricate details. Now I've got my individual pieces, which I'll join onto the main body of my platypus. But first I'm going to add a few little textures. So I've got my platypuses, my platypi, my platypuses feet. I've got my platypus's feet. So I'm going to make some little toes with the sharp end of this tool. And again, this is very intricate. So if you're working with lower level students, have bigger designs with simple shapes. So I've got this little platypus claws, and I'm going to make some texture into his tail just by scraping on the surface. Now to join our pieces together, I'm going to scrape the polymer clay from the bottom to join them and attach them. Again, you can use glue to do this, so you can bake the pieces individually and separately and then glue them to the main form. But if you do want them to join all together, then I just use my clay tool to bind those two areas together. Okay, there we go. So we've got our little platypus completed with all the textures that we need. So all you'd need to do now is pick it up, put it on a tray, put it in the oven. So depending on the thickness, the oven time will vary. So if you're using a conventional oven, 130 degrees and 15 minutes for every ½ centimetre of thickness that you have. So this one is just a little bit less than a centimetre in thickness. So I would put it in for about ½ an hour in the oven. If you do overbake polymer clay, then the colour tends to come out, so you'll be left with more of a grey, brittle piece. So you don't want to do that, and you don't want to underbake it either, because then it will be a bit brittle and easy to break as well. So about ½ an hour should be good for a piece like this. So we'll bake that later, but to give you an idea of how you can make other pieces of jewellery. Of course, if you've got something like a brooch, what I would do is either use hot glue or super tack on the back of our brooch piece and stick it down to let that dry. If you were making an earring, again, you could hot glue that piece down, or if you are using a hanging piece of jewellery, what you'd need to do is make sure you poke a hole into your polymer clay before you bake it, otherwise there won't be a hole to put in your jump rings. So we'll attach the jump ring to our little paddle pop and then that hook for the earring. So just separating your jump ring, threading it through the polymer clay, and the polymer clay will be hard, so you don't have to worry about distorting the shape. Thread that through and then just close that jump ring. And then that's all you need to do to create some different kinds of jewellery pieces. So this is a really fun activity where you can teach students modelling skills, you can look at design, jewellery making, all different kinds of things. Perfect for junior students all the way through to secondary students as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.